Happy Sabbath, and for many of us in South Louisiana, in Cajun country, let me say happy Sunday Gras. It is Sunday before Mardi Gras. It is Mardi Gras weekend in South Louisiana, and wherever you find yourself today with family or friends, and wherever you find yourself in your relationship with the Lord, let me say happy Sabbath and welcome back to our podcast series entitled Choose to Live. This is Father Mark over at Christ Redeemer with our final Sabbath conversation inside our podcast series as we begin to land the plane with Choose to Live. And as we are wrapping up this podcast series, I would encourage us today, before we begin to look ahead, to actually look back at all of the graces that God has bestowed upon you since we began walking together on Christmas Day. First of all, let me just say that for many of us who are listening, perhaps this is the first time that you've been as committed or disciplined in a spiritual exercise as you find yourself now. And if this is the first time that you've maintained this type of attention to your spiritual life, or if over the last several months this is the most committed you've been in your commitment to the Lord, I just want to say it's been a real privilege to be with you. And that as a father, as a priest, as a fellow disciple, I'm proud of you for hanging in there and sticking in there. If during the last several months you've kind of had some ups and downs, some fits and starts, you've been able to stay engaged most of the time, but you had life interrupt you along the way, I also want to just say that I'm proud of you for hanging in there. For most of us, our commitment to God is filled with our commitments to all the other things in life. And if life sometimes gets in the way of your experience of God, then I guess the encouragement would be for us to find God in the midst of the interruptions rather than seeing the interruptions as something that's preventing us from the Lord. And so it's at times like this, as we have an opportunity, that I would encourage us to look back on everything that God has done for you in your life. You know, when we find ourselves in the midst of something like this podcast series, day in, day out, we live our lives day in, day out, and we can miss the big picture unless we take time to look at the big picture. There have been moments where God has really kind of touched your heart. There have been topics that really kind of grabbed your attention. There have been things that you have shared with the Lord and some things that God has shared with you. And now is a time that I would encourage us to begin to look back and to savor the graces of what God has done in your life. And so a simple question for all of you today, which is, what has God done in your life since we began this journey at Christmas? And for many of us in South Louisiana, it's a perfect time to ask that question, because even though there's going to be a whole lot going on Mardi Gras Monday and Mardi Gras Tuesday, a lot of us are not going to be at work and we'll have some extra time. And if we intentionally choose to use that time well, then it can provide a space where we can harvest the graces that God has given us, and we can become real clear on what God has done in our lives. Let's take today and let's take the next couple days to begin to look back and savor the graces of what God has done in our lives. And until we have a conversation tomorrow as we begin to look ahead, in your prayer and in your self-reflection, God bless you.